So we actually have a variety of programs for the Esports Association. One is career readiness. So we actually work with the Career Center here to better prepare our association members to learn those life skills that they are going to need so that when they make that transition over to a career pathway.
Awesome, awesome. This guy, we gotta turn around. This guy wins almost every tournament we throw. I'm telling you. You gotta watch him live. He's gonna be something big tonight.
CSUDH Esports Association is centered in 4 domains: academics and research, community engagement, competition, and entertainment.
We're trying to make sure that the students are prepared for the future, that they understand the diversity that media offers now, and again, look beyond the traditional outlets.
They can gain fieldwork, partnerships, as well as potential job opportunities and in both the higher education and K-12 fields.
We believe that esports is a strategy and not an outcome. Our association is here to help anyone that is willing to learn how to take your gaming skills to the next level through a supporting community. If you are looking to showcase your production talents to help support our esports teams, then this is the association for you. We host online and on-site tournaments that will allow our members to showcase their competitive spirit. Our association broadcasts out our competition and practices to entertain our community as well as our global audience. We believe that by joining us, you will come out of the association feeling transformed and better prepared to transfer your skills into your career. Join today and begin to explore endless opportunities through our Esports Association here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. A special guest that we will have the opportunity to talk with. And if I may just introduce to you all, William Strickland, who also goes by Bill. Bill, if you don't mind introducing yourself to everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're able to join us today, and particularly my students. I am teaching at Cal State Dominguez Hills the dispute in sports dispute resolution in sports. I'm an attorney by trade. I've represented professional athletes for over 35 years. Probably I'll just drop one name, Michael Jordan, in his first 8, 9 years in the league. But I've had the good fortune to be certified in basketball and football for those years, and I've done a little bit of everything from negotiating contracts for team play, but also endorsement contracts. So I wanted my students in particular to hear what Ruben has been generous enough to indicate he will share, because there are parallels between team sports, that is basketball, baseball, football, hockey, and soccer, and esports and how it's evolving. And I think it has, esport that is, has the capacity of going worldwide to surpass in terms of viewership and even revenue generation what you see in football, baseball, basketball, and the other team sports. So welcome, and look forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. And for everyone out there that is watching this live and also for recording purposes, my name is Ruben Caputo. I am the academic advisor and general manager at Cal State Dominguez Hills. So it's a pleasure to have you all. And really just a quick announcement, and we do this every time, and we just always want to welcome any feedback, any opportunity to chat or discuss. This is a dialogue today that we're getting a chance to do. And so please put your comments or questions in the chat, in the discussion, so that we can take a look at. And if there's a question that you may have that we don't get to at any point, feel free to reach us out. We'll have this all in the description area as well as the resources. And please do, if you like what you see, please support us in all of our social media channels to keep yourself updated and notified based off the other activities that we've got going on here at Cal State Dominguez Hills Esports. Okay, excellent. So dispute resolution in esports. I'd like to, if I may, Bill, just kind of begin and just touch on the subject of
Sure.
how do esports teams make money? How is it that they generate, so much funds that you hear in the news and reports that there's teams that are fast growing, there's individual, teammates or team players that are making all sorts of funds that just are eye dropping. And I think what eye drops too is that some of them are very young, right? And it's surprising and surpassing so many great athletes that we know have played different games from traditional to what we're seeing now. So just to help for the good of the group is that there's major revenue streams for esports, and just to name a few, it's media rights, ticket sales, merchandise, sponsorships, direct advertisement, publisher fees. These are just to name a few. And anything that I share out, there's probably even more if you research. But these are just some of the areas. And also, you mentioned something earlier about how it's growing, and you're absolutely right. The data does tell us that esports is fast growing form of entertainment, and it's global. I think you can't grow as fast as you're growing now without being global. The projections right now is that it's increasing by 9% per year. So they're stating that by 2022, the global video game market is expected to surpass 190 billion in revenue. Right in 2018, it was 156 million, and it's expected to grow to 1.79 billion by 2022. Just to give you some numbers to kind of let settle in for a minute and just let that process. This isn't what we typically grew up with, video games and what it was before. Really, we see such a shift of what video games are today and how publishers are informed based off where our esports competitive teams, or even those that are looking into starting into a competitive league or entertaining this, how this changes the dynamic and the shift of attention, how they can grow to essentially obtain some of this prestige that everyone's looking to do or get themselves started to do. That's just to give you a quick little tidbit of just what's happening right now in the world of esports. But just hearing those numbers, Bill, what comes to mind?
Phenomenal potential. I mean, in many ways, here in the U.S., we focus on the team sports of basketball, baseball, football, and hockey and soccer. But knowing where those numbers are headed, and the fact that in many ways, team sports is catching up with esports, particularly given the COVID-19 phenomenon now, where everybody is supposed to be wearing masks, but quarantined off, having to communicate through the internet, where esports is king, and that growth will facilitate continued growth. But what I find interesting is that in team sports, again, they're struggling right now, obviously, as to how to continue,
right? How
to generate the revenues, how to sustain themselves, given the past operation practices. But esports is born out of it in a way. I mean, I was reading where the The first tournament was in 1972 or something.
Mm.
That's like a baby compared to these other sports. And yet, look at its projected growth, as you just alluded to. So I think those numbers are astounding. And I asked you about Ninja,
Oh, yes.
the kind of money he's earning. I mean, that it rivals anybody in team sports right now.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that too, Bill. And you're absolutely right. Esports is an infant comparing traditional sports like your NBA, your MLBs, and and I think I was looking back. MLB is 150 over 150 years old
Right.
of a game, and the NBA, 70 plus years old. And so these are your mature, established organizations that obviously had to learn based off uncovering and discoveries on certain topics that led to conflict or issues, right? At the end of the day, it's trying to learn from those studies and trying to best inform. But again, to each their own, sport. It's not 100% transferable. It's, again, the NBA has certain guidelines and rules than the MLB or the NFL or the MLS, what have you. Um, so there's a lot of learning across the board that I know esports has taken into consideration, but you're absolutely right. The internet phenomena, or when the internet met games, it just disrupted everything. Before the internet, right? It was just, hey, we got together and played arcade games, and I don't know, for those who are watching are like, what is an arcade? I mean, it's just, that's how the bedrock of video gaming started. And
Right.
so that the internet component, being able to connect with others and play online, that was the beginning of something big, right? The beginning of what we see in potential in esports.
Well, if I might interject something else, another thought that supports the potential phenomenal growth. Well, it's no longer potential, it's being realized. Basketball started in this country, baseball for the most part in this country, football as we know it as American football in this country. And what has happened as they have attempted to expand over the years, they have explored going international.
Right.
So, give you an example of how it was restrained at one point. There was a time when, if you went to European basketball, you were not allowed to have more than two American players on the team at any one time because the skill level had surpassed anybody regionally. Now they've opened up more to where you're seeing more and more people born abroad being drafted in the NBA. Esports starts globally from day one.
Yeah.
Anybody can compete. It doesn't take any physical skill in a sense of, like, obviously if someone has a physical infirmity, it'd be hard to play football.
Right.
Not impossible, but hard.
Right.
Well, esports seems to be not only global, but open its doors to any and everyone. So I think that will facilitate continued phenomenal growth.
Oh yeah, and I think you just hit the nail on the head right there. Is that esports, fast growing as it is, it opens the doors to any and all. There is no, you have to be a certain
Height or weight.
height, or you have to be born with these gifted talents or whatnot. It's really anyone can learn, as long as you're willing to learn, right? That's number one. And then everything else to plug you in to actually structuring, to actually getting some coaches and mentors, and being connected with even just your friends, and making more networks. It just, you increase your ability very quickly, if you will. And everything takes obviously practice, but you're absolutely right. That piece right there has a lot to do with the fast growing, and at the same time, the global aspect of it. It's almost like there is no, hey, restriction of, because you're from this nationality or this origin or what have you. You can form a team remotely and still compete.
Right.
And it gives that accessibility, which essentially, it allows to be COVID resistant, if you will, in many aspects. I don't want to say all. There's definitely other aspects that we all want to get back to our normal and be able to actually be in stadiums and watch and witness, with other fans and with other people to actually experience the energy of what goes behind in a production piece in a team environment piece of esports, because it changes dynamics, right? To do it remotely, it's slight dynamic change, right, than doing it all together side by side, elbow to elbow. Um, but yes, so and that's interesting that you mentioned that too. I do see, even just with the NFL, trying to infuse the sport outside of the US, right? You see
Right.
them make trips to Europe and actually book certain teams to play to hopefully bring fans to start engaging into the content and in the sport of football, and which is all confusing, right? Because football over there is technically soccer over here, so even the name shift is something that even dabble um, to consider. But yeah, but here it's almost like everybody just said, hey, we have this connection. We like to play games. Some want to take it a little bit more serious. Let's put a name to ourselves and let's go out there and compete and show that we show a skill set or a team that can disrupt and change. Can be number one or be the top ranked team out there. And so it gives people that opportunity to jump into a competition if they'd like to participate. Um,
And that's what makes it attractive in my mind as well, because I draw a parallel to the International Olympic Games. I mean,
mm,
where
yes,
theoretically countries from around the world can qualify and bring teams to the competition. Well, that almost starts right from the beginning in esports. But that also is the genesis as to bringing about all the disputes
that's right.
that we have to entertain as well. Different legal jurisdictions, different kinds of concepts in terms of how law should be approached. It's interesting to watch it mend itself into what will potentially be one maybe universal body regulating esports internationally, but that remains to be seen, and that's a long way to go too before you get there.
Right. Absolutely. And it just takes time, right? Some time from today, we'll notice and explore issues or conflicts that will arise in the sport. And, it will make for a lot of people to view and watch what the hearings are, what this looks like. And I also do want to mesh a little bit of, in this world of esports, yeah, there are players in the team, but there's also what makes this phenomena become a phenomena is getting to know a little bit of the lives of these players. That makes it part of the experience, if you will. Somebody that enjoys to watch, esports live, right? And tune in to the channel and be able to say, hey, I'm going to tune in, and even though this is being broadcast in a different part of the world, I'm very much intrigued to follow this particular player. And that is the whole aspect of streaming, right? Content. These are content creators as well. And these are special people that just have these personalities that are bubbly or have this energy or this effect. And you mentioned a name earlier, um, a very popular streamer, very well known, very well liked and received as well, based off his energy and his character. This is people gravitate towards that, and you see that also in traditional sports, right? With basketball, I'm thinking about basketball because their season's about to kick off,
Right.
and in the midst of all what's happening right now, and being able to showcase a little bit of personality off the court goes a long way to kind of develop that fandomship, if you will. So
Hmm.
one can follow from across the world to say, oh wow, look, he has this, he respects this, and he's part of the culture, he lives it, he's this and that, or she's this and this. And that also is a component that goes well with, hey, how is it that these players become players to begin with, or be part of this team to begin with? And so, and it's not to say that's everything. It's to say that, hey, that is a component to esports that has led to a lot of, hey, if this one player has developed this likability factor and is being drafted, or if you will, or taken to a team that has recruited this individual, that following follows him or her into the arena or into a space that competes competitively. And it meshes really well. And that's where a lot of the revenues that I just mentioned earlier also gets mentioned of someone like Ninja, who has big contracts and has made a living off of just producing content. And some of it is probably not even related to esports. It's just life. Hey, this is just me making pancakes today. And I'm showing you and welcome you a little bit to what I do, just to say, hey, I'm a human being too. We all got to pay bills. We all got to take care of our house. We all have to take care of our living arrangements, what have you. This is some of the preparation. This is what it looks like, so that anybody can look at this and say, hey, this is what it took me to get here. Perhaps here's a model, not to say that you just follow it to a T, but this is what I did, and it worked. But if I may touch on this particular piece that has been in a lot of people's minds, especially those that are watching, uh, you know, the channels of pursuing either esports or just someone that's entertaining and being able to say, gosh, there's a lot of likability factor. But there has been recently a very popular streamer, and his name is Dr. Disrespect. And essentially, he just recently got banned from the channel and the platform that he streamed in. And so there's a lot of, what just happened? What's going on? Why did the ban happen to begin with? So not many people know about this, and just everyone's just waiting intently to hear what's really happening in the news. And so this was announced about a month ago, I want to say, more or less. And this person had millions of followers and has negotiated a multi-million-dollar contract as well. So this person was already set to be sort of a staple, if you will, into the channel. And just recently got banned, and there seems to not be so much explanation based off of it. But just by the analysis, how does one get banned? How does one get kicked out? It's almost like in traditional sports, how do you, somebody got fined, right? It could get so severe that the player gets kicked out, right? Even to the point of, hey, no team's going to hire you. No team is going to pick you up, or no one's going to broadcast you now from our backing and support. So there is those issues that arise that, one can say, oh, well, I'll just go to the next channel and the next channel. But it's really not about that. It's about like understanding, unpacking case by case, so that one can actually understand, hey, this is what it looks like as you're producing something that is going to be seen by millions of people, or even just one person, or at a later time. And this had to do with, just based off my analysis and reading a little bit more into what's happening in this particular case. There was some kind of violation from the community guidelines, but that prohibited some kind of conduct. But there's still not much understanding yet of what it is in particular. And this particular case, I invite anyone to look into it as you're studying. But there had to be, there's some kind of dispute resolution that is coming out of this. There's some kind of mediation or arbitration, or some kind of possible settlement negotiation that's happening, because it's so quiet that it warrants the attention of many folks to see what the result will be, or the outcome will be once something like this gets announced. But and just to give you a little bit of context too, Bill, is when a streamer gets this type of notoriety and has this brand, if you will, and then also builds off that brand to join teams. And whether it's on a short contract or a long contract, it tells you that there's lots of fine line rules of what can actually consist of breaching of contract, but understanding what those breaches are is very important, because of sometimes there's tampering, right? There's tampering, just like in traditional sports. Hey, if I pick up a bat and I tamper with that bat, and there's cork in it, and I use that bat to further on my performance, then you tampered, right? You're definitely suspended or something to that effect.
Well, there's tampering also in terms of LeBron James supposedly talking to players on other rosters. But
Oh, right, right. Yes.
this begs another issue, and this is what I was talking about: the developing law of esports, the parameters of esports. The collective bargaining agreements that pertain to team sports are born out of labor law, U.S. labor law, and it can, within that context, when it is collectively bargained for between, let's say, employers and employees, talent and owners, then they can set the parameters of conduct, like the dress codes, or how you are to conduct yourselves after the games, or make yourself available for the media and so forth. And so over a period of years, it becomes a little bit more defined, and it is codified in terms of the collective bargaining agreements, the uniform player contracts, and so forth. But what you're just touching on is something that falls outside of maybe that structure. One, team sports has a lot of that structure, but they still have gray areas. How do you explain Colin Kaepernick not being back in the NFL? Well, did he really violate a rule of conduct? The president chimed in on it, but that didn't define it as such. But it was a collective mindset or a collective approach by the owners that have really effectively prohibited him. So when he had to go to court, he had to go outside of the collective bargaining agreement, and it talks about things like restraint of trades and collusion and antitrust, which are still born and defined within the labor law, more litigious in nature. But a lot of the team sports stuff that you're talking about, if this player had been on a team sport, you probably would already know what he violated, because it would have been defined. But you get into those other areas, like I said, in Colin Kaepernick, what did he really do? Isn't he allowed a freedom of speech and expression? Well, right. The rules of conducting the game may say, well, no kneeling. But what's happening this year?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what esports is going to struggle with for a while too, or where are the boundaries of community accepted conduct? Then you've got the overlay of being international in nature. So what may be unacceptable in this country, you may find prohibited or acceptable in other countries. And how do you mend that when you've got members from around the world coming together to form a team and or league? And that's what intrigues me, is how this whole area of regulating and dispute resolution in esports is going to eventually evolve. And I think, and you've already seen it, and you can speak to it as well, some of the rules and some of the approaches in the courts that are trying to position themselves to govern esports are paralleling those that have historic histories to them, to where you can say, this is the way they did it over here, and we're going to try to do that. And we saw where it worked and where it may not have worked. And so we're going to set up similar parameters in terms of what we're going to allow in esports.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it's something that, again, it's taken by case, because the sport is, infant. You mentioned it earlier, from comparing its first event ever held to where we're at today. And it really does set sort of that standard of, okay, let's learn from this case and let's see how we replicate it. And sometimes too, climate has a big factor in all of this too. Had this happened with Kaepernick and the climate that we're in today, oh my goodness, I think we'll find a different story and outcome, right? And that's also the case with esports, and that doesn't change. Now, it is going to be something that, for more streamers or aspiring streamers or content creators, I mean, they make their living based off their social media presence. they have to be able to connect with people that are getting their form of entertainment or connection, if you will, through these individuals or team or production or what have you. Um, because essentially a brand was closed. And those who follow a brand, they're thinking, wait a second, where is that person? And I'm doing this whole sign of like clicking, but it's,
Yeah.
you know, I'd like to know more, because now are you saying this person is banned from this channel and maybe for future other ones, or how is that going to relay and tamper and hurt this individual to join possible teams if they're interested in? It just leads to that kind of warranting question, because we're wanting more, we're wanting to see more. And absolutely, it's good to learn from how things were handled in the past so that we can help make best informed decisions. But it is a very new discovery zone that we're in, and those that are actually protecting themselves um, are having to explain why they did what they did and how they set up these contracts. What does a breach of contract really look like? Because some of these professional streamers, if you will, that also correlate with some of the esports teams, they have individual one-on-one contracts. Yes, there is a standard, if you will, for everybody, but these are special negotiated contracts with some level of understanding that both parties can agree on before they sign. Um, but yeah, I completely understand exactly where you're coming from with the perspective of this is going to be a hurdle or something for us to get to. But here's the best thing is that we're here. You know, esports is getting to a point that they have this opportunity and chance to address these challenges that do arise. Um, and that's part of growth for any sport, really. There's opportunity there in those challenges.
And I'm also thinking that I'd be interested in this gentleman that's been banned, whether
Okay.
his brand is able to move to another platform or streaming service, like you said, because obviously, where could Kaepernick go, for an example?
Right.
He could maybe play in Canada or some lesser leagues, but the creme de la creme is in the NFL. Same in basketball, same in baseball. I mean, we've seen a migration of foreign baseball players into Major League Baseball because it's deemed to be the creme de la creme.
Right.
Well, yeah, they could go play elsewhere, make less money, and so forth. But it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to move, and then the enforceability of whatever arbitration rulings or court rulings. I mean, that's the issue too. How are you going to enforce it legally and under whose legal standard? Not to make it too much of a legal thing, but that all plays into structure,
Right.
control, management of the direction that esport is headed in. And that's where I think there are opportunities for students to grow and understand they don't have to concentrate on the sports that are going on here in the US, certainly not the team sports, but esports, it seems to me, is wide open because you want to have people making management and arbitration decisions who have expertise in esports.
Right.
So how long have they had to, what period of time have students and others, existing lawyers for that matter, had to really develop some ideas about how to best govern it? The regulating bodies are out there are still struggling with issues. So it's not that it's a mess, but it's an opportunity. It's a challenge.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you say that too, Bill. Just that's how I see where we're at in esports now. What is those next 10 years are going to look like, right? We're going to have conflicts. We're going to have some disputes that needs attention. So for those that are looking and studying, yes, look into the world of esports because it's highly needed. Talking to an esports attorney, I mean, I get different perspectives. It's to say it feels like the wild wild west right now. In short, that's how it was summarized to me. And so as I'm learning and pursuing the study of, hey, what are the cases that are out there that led to uh, lawsuits or being upset so much that has led to a division, if you will. Um, we obviously need to learn from those experiences so that others don't fall into or subject to those um, constraints that led to that kind of disruption there. But this segues into something that I wanted to touch with you too, and also pick your brain as well. Is that there was statements that was made not too long ago from Joe Rogan,
Oh yeah.
and so Joe Rogan, how I immediately interpret that is Joe Rogan does what Joe Rogan does. He wants to create attention, and the shock value has to be high. And I completely understand Joe, and I just think to myself, well, I'm sure he's going to get the reactions. I typically kind of look at it as, that's just Joe. But I think nobody has really probably taken Joe by the shoulder and just crosswalk with him and just say, hey, look what esports has done actually for many people, to give them opportunity to actually have, this issue of genders, right? Just being able to play. Female and male can play together in a sport and team and have access to it at the same time and be able to compete. I don't know what sport, in traditional sports, you can do that. Um, at the same time, those with even perhaps special needs can also be in the same space and compete. And if you ask me if I'm raising kids, yeah, I think all sports are great sports. I mean, it should be just that. But if we're gonna discuss and nitpick and be able to say, well, this sport's better than that sport, then that's just opinion. But really, the results and the proof from esports and so rapidly being able to bridge some of these barriers that traditional sports in some way, shape, or form have created, um, that goes to show, hey, there is this there, that also contributes to the high rise of popularity and viewership and everything that goes with it. That you feel like, hey, I could be part of something big if I wanted to, and including people is always going to be the best result as opposed to excluding or saying, hey, your talents are no good here, or they're just not as strong as others.
I couldn't agree with you more. If I might interject, and
Yes, please.
for those that may not know what Rogan said, I basically, to paraphrase it, is playing video games is a waste of time. And there's nothing I could disagree with more. We saw and we see still in team sports, parents saying, well, you can play the sports up to a period of time, but after that, you have to turn to something else because you're not likely to make it. And you've seen women struggle, like the women's championship soccer team struggling to get paid equally.
Right.
And yes, it'll be very difficult for a lady to compete in the NFL unless she's doing some position was less physical than a lineman, let's say.
Right.
So, and then you have the racial aspects. I remember vividly some of the racial animus that I encountered playing ball myself. I was drafted by the Dodgers out of high school, and they themselves did not express it, but it was there. And you hear the thing about the black quarterbacks couldn't compete at a certain level. And now you look at the NFL rosters and see who are among the leading quarterbacks. So the inclusivity of esports can be cheered. I think it's a great idea that a lady can sit right next to a man and compete just as well as he can, and that's important. And when you're talking about the personality driven revenue streams and stuff, you have women out here to watch and participate and get involved. So I think it can be very inclusive, and thereby, I think to the extent you've got a child or someone in the household is playing video games, it does not have to be viewed as a waste of time. It might be more, I think, appropriately viewed as an opportunity to grow and reach out to others and understand. Now, I could never play a video game because I couldn't even turn on Pac-Man, but I see as the sophistication and the reach grows, there's a tremendous opportunity here.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, in the video game industry, has changed rapidly, and mentioned earlier too. The fact that the internet came into play and just met with video games, it really changed things for the reach component, being able to connect with people globally. I mean, it always boggled my mind, Bill, and I'll just share, like, it always amazes me when, you know, players get together online, may not speak the same language, but understand the same goal and
Right.
be able to work towards that goal. That's pretty amazing, that we can do that. And if we wanted to, just by turning on a platform that plays a game, right, in a fashion of a game. And yeah, not to say that you can't do that in traditional sports. You can speak sort of the game common language, because there's rules, there's guidelines, there's clear objectives, there's a point system, what have you. Um, but yeah, I would just say to that point, you know, probably missed the mark, and you know, that to me was just a form of him just doing him. And I kind of took it as, oh well, he probably is not well informed.
Well,
To see it
we
lately.
see that in other aspects of our society today, and I won't talk about the occupant, but
Yeah, it's okay.
it is what it is.
Yeah. But that just tells you something, though. If that was the result, or let's just say his thoughts and opinions, you know, when I hear that, I think to myself, stigmatism, right? There's this idea of what a video game, or a gamer, if you will, somebody that plays the games or is an enthusiast of it, um, there's a picture in their minds, and so they were perceived that way or painted that way. So essentially what we do, that's what we like to inform, in that our mission is that we are centered in academics and research, and we are centered in community engagement and the competition and the ability to entertain people, because we have some content that's worthy of watching. um, that there is a lot of learning. There's a lot of hard and soft skills that happen when you're playing a game to share. And that's something that we share to our students is, hey, invite your parents, actually show them what you're doing. um, Let them know, like they may have seen it, but what typically happens is they only see the front layer, if you will, that interface.
Right.
They're not seeing what goes behind that. Explaining the mechanics a little bit to them goes a long way. And when I get a chance to talk to people that are, you know, have grew up playing games in the household and now are parents, they'll tell you stories like, oh no, video games changed my life. Video games helped me. They'll share their testimonial and say, hey, video games helped me increase my vocabulary. Uh, Video games helped me communicate effectively and more efficiently. I learned how to practice my leadership skills through video games, because, well, I was put in a captain position and I just led the team, and I was able to handle some of the stresses that comes with managing a team very well and effectively. And people see me as this calm person that can navigate towards something that you're being shot at in a game, right? In this virtual atmosphere of, hey, how to control that chaos that's going on right there.
And working with others, I think, is invaluable, particularly in these days and times, and understanding how to get along and understanding how to be gracious in winning and gracious in losing.
You got it. You got it.
Setbacks and how to come back again and try to overcome. And like you mentioned earlier, you know, studying the game tapes, if you will, and saying, okay, this is how I can improve. Well, that's what we all should be doing in all of our lives in every respect is, where did I get wrong? Because life comes at you and you'll make mistakes, but it's how you stand up after that mistake and move forward. So I agree with you.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I'm glad you share that, because that is part of just sportsmanship, and just even just translating it outside of the game atmosphere into the real world, and to say, hey, you know, there's a way to carry ourselves. We don't have to flaunt it. We don't have to, you know, speak loud about it. Let like how we say in traditional sport, let the scoreboard do the talking. Let the game do the talking, and we just um, essentially carry ourselves to be better people from that experience. And so there's a lot of great opportunity, a lot of good coaching and mentoring that is going on in the world of esports, that you can see that there is a lot of support, and you take, hey, these are people that play the game and understand the game, and those that are actually, hey, they're just naturally good motivators. Hey, I may not understand fully the game, but I understand concepts, and that typically is good enough to get anybody in a position to understand, okay, we need to relax, we need to breathe, because in anything that's competitive, adrenaline rushes. And even if you're sitting down, it doesn't look like it. And that's another piece too to talk about another time. But yeah, something that I'll share just for our moment right now is that in typical traditional sports, if someone's hurt, you can tell because they're limping off the field or court. But in esports, they're not limping off the chair, if you will. They're limping off here mentally. So there's a lot of mental components there when you're when you're watching, excuse me, esports, that a coach or a mentor, something to that effect, helps. But anywho, Bill, I am so sorry. I think we've reached our time, but this is great. I'm glad we had the chance to connect like this and be able to produce something that hopefully just warrants more conversation, more dialogue. And I know that we didn't get to everyone's questions, but that's okay. Feel free at any point to reach out via email or social media if you like, and we're happy to discuss. This is just one of many, I'm sure, and it's warranting that we continue to have these discussions so that we can get to a position where we can actually do some of the work to help inform, help strengthen, if you will, in esports, because the industry is just growing and there's lots of opportunity and we need good people back in the industry.
Yeah, and Ruben, I appreciate you sharing your expertise. This has been educational for me as well, and particularly as I look at again dispute resolutions. And I think as the structures form within esports, as the money grows, you're going to have certainly more disputes. And I always say sport is people driven, and it's no different than esports here. So. And it's not that it has to be bad people driven, it's just sometimes difference of views and opinions and approaches. And so, again, for I say to the students, there are opportunities here, particularly as neutrals in this business as it grows and develops, that you really need to explore rather than just trying to represent an athlete, certainly in team sports, because that industry is shrinking rather rapidly, as this one, esports, is expanding.
Well, no, well said. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. And for everybody, thank you so much for joining us in. And yeah, feel free to connect with us. Thank you all.